26th district. Yeah, it's 26th
28.
district.
28.
28. See, this is why we have to double check. And there's so you were in the Navy you had a 26-year career.
26 years active duty. Yes.
Yeah, and you also have that distinction of you were one of these Mustangs. You went from enlisted to officer.
Yes.
Ah, so what would you like for the audience to know about that military background? And let me preface it with this. One of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on is I think you're a great fellow and a good friend, but also I think we need more of this experience in Congress and leadership in Congress, like I know that you naturally have. So let's talk a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about your military background.
From a leadership point of view, well, my military background was made through hard work and study and commitment. There are core values in the Army and the Navy Marine Corps. They are honor, courage, and commitment. And I didn't really know that or recite those things at the time. We recited other things, but I learned and really focused on those toward the latter part of my career after I left. Those values and what they meant, and reflection on what we did, how I served, how my colleagues served. And that's what it was. Just, the adventures that I've been privileged to have at sea as an enlisted sailor, being a picket ship, a ship's company on a picket ship, or actually a cruiser that was in a battle group, a picket ship. That means you go ahead of the battle group. I don't know. I'm just telling you stories here. The battle
No,
group
no,
to protect
our
them.
listeners
And
love
I
this.
saw,
They actually want to know these things.
I saw some very memorable things. One of the memorable things was when we, used to throw our trash and garbage outside and poke holes in it so it sunk to the bottom of the ocean. But sometimes they float. And one time we were being trailed by a Soviet AGI, a spy ship, and our captain called everybody up on deck and he said, "Hey, look out! It's around dusk." And the AGI was in contrast on the, probably a couple miles away, mile maybe, and we could see them through the binoculars. These men on ships going through trash because some of our trash bags failed to sink. So the captain brought us up to say, "Hey, boys, make sure you make sure those trash bags are weighted. If there's
Right.
if there's any confidential material in there, anything they could glean from us, that's very bad."
And
That's
they do
one
it.
memorable. Yeah, and that's one memorable item. Another one is in a big exercise. I think it was 2 or possibly 3, probably just 2 full battle groups doing a exercise in the Pacific where we were going to war. It's a classic Cold War at sea scenario, and our ship, a cruiser, which meant surface to air protection of the battle group, or in this case, battle groups. We were sent hundreds of miles ahead to be the eyes and radar radar protection, and to be able to shoot down the Soviet Bears or Tu-22s or other aircraft we command.
I love this. Could you say that again? Shoot down the Tu-22s. I love to hear that sound.
Shoot down the Tu-22s. Oh, in my last trip to Ukraine, I saw some MiG-15 variants that actually made a L-21, I think. And why were they my favorite kind of MiGs? Because they were out of commission, grass, weeds growing all around, and I got my picture by it, so I'm loving that.
Yeah.
We were receptive to that kind of stuff in the past. Yeah, so in that war at sea scenario with picket ship, I remember being in the CIC Combat Information Center and seeing the radars, our depiction of them, and seeing how they were trying to spoof us by dropping flares, and we were trying to, or they're trying to jam us. We got through that. They're trying to make themselves something they weren't, and we were trying to inject into the electromagnetic spectrum items that would confuse them. So that was a classic introduction to what we have going on now with an information war. And the idea is not really to mess with the screen on the ship's combat information center, but that's still true. But it's really to mess with our minds with false, misleading, false flags. deception. So
Yeah.
that's what we're at.
Well, I know that Phil's a much nicer guy than I am, so I call it. I'm a big brand of brain fuckery. And if that's what it takes to destroy the enemy, then I am all about that.
Yeah.
I want to come to we're going to talk a little bit about the information warfare and disinformation, but our friends just got through seeing a really nice. I love this video. I'm a big fan of this video. Of this venture that you started with when I first talked to you 4 years ago, bro. 4 years ago. Think about that.
Yeah.
Got on the phone with you, and we had been talking before that about disinformation work, and then you were going to come here, and you had a Sprinter van, and you were eager to put it to use. So
Well,
let's
actually, it was a
start.
Renault. I think it
Oh,
was
oh,
not a
sorry,
Sprinter. It was a
that's great.
Renault.
Yeah,
I'm currently in a Sprinter, but you upgrade
yeah.
in life.
But you were on a mission to come here. So let's talk about that first round you came here and your memories of that and what was so important of that for you because it set the stage for your visits.
It did, and it started with me having lost in a congressional election and going back to hanging out with my family in London.
Hmm.
And my stepbrother had said, "Hey, if you want to go to Ukraine, I'll introduce you to somebody." And I thought, my wife turned to me and said, "I think it'd be great if you go to Ukraine." I thought, "Oh, okay, what does she mean by that?" Well, but it was all good. But and it was the type of thing that
Hmm.
I should be doing. Like a lot of us in the service, we're mission driven,
Right.
and we were at a time in our lives and my life where we had the means and the time and the preparation through a career in the Navy to be able to do such things. So I loaded up a van full of donated clothes, some dog food and other items and a van and a trailer, I think, and
Hmm.
went over intending to meet up with the woman who my stepbrother introduced me to, who had fled Mykolaiv with her family and with her small business. And
Right.
her business happened to be dog breeder for Burmese mountain dogs. So I was thinking I'd go over to Poland and just help her and help other refugees. But as it turns out, she had a passion to get back in country, back to her home, and
Exactly.
supply them with things. That drive was unstoppable. She had done the paperwork to make sure we can get over the border as humanitarian volunteers, and so that's what we did. We went to Mykolaiv and delivered cat food, dog food, and other things. We bought more items. Both in Poland and then later on in Ukraine and in markets to deliver to her family, friends, and her colleagues, veterinarians, other dog breeders, customers she's had across the country. So it was that trip. It was the first trip, not the only one. First trip on 20. This is summer 2022. Um,
Hmm.
um, up to outskirts of Kyiv. We didn't need to go into Kyiv. No, we did go for uh, basically sightseeing, but not to deliver anything. Went out to Bucha, and that's where I think that you met us for some filming. So, it was Bucha, right?
Bucha, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so we did that, and then I went back to Poland. We loaded up again and came back out. And I think there were two or possibly three big journeys from loading up stuff on outside Ukraine and bringing it in. And that whole evolution took 6 weeks for me, away from London and to London, inconsequential, except that was my first, delivery operation,
Right.
so to speak. And then I came back, again with different people, to run equipment, surgical equipment, medical supplies, also some food, types of food that are needed and some warm clothes, to places that had been requesting them.
Right.
And I didn't figure that out by myself, but I plugged in with this network of people who were helping. And that was very rewarding. We had our last delivery in Odessa just a day after.
Getting a pause. How are we doing on our signal there? Oh, did we lose Phil? Did we lose our brother there? Hold on. Let's see. Let me make sure we got him back in here. Hold on. Resend just in case. Just in case. Just in case. It's all good. C'est dobre. Okay. Sent another request, so we'll get to come back in. It happens. But while we wait for Phil to bump back in here, and actually more people are joining, so we will get that in. Hold on. You can't really tell because actually on my end it froze as well. It happens. The platform is pretty good though. Actually, I'll be honest with you. I could, as a technical guy, I can sort of complain about some of these items, but I think that they're a good little platform. We'll just wait to see if Phil gets his connection back, and it happens, especially when you're out and about in certain areas where you're on cell or you're on mobile technology. Here in Ukraine, I travel across the country and I hit whole gaps of land where nothing. And you're doom scrolling and you're trying to doom scroll with no signal and no communications. It's very, very stressful. Let's see here. I'm so OCD for my flags. Got my 501 battalion over here. Got some Marines home, by the way, in our released defenders the other day. First video, sir. And yeah, glad to see some of the guys home. We'll just wait to get Phil in here. And also in the background, I'm planning for what I will do when we're done. After we finish our broadcast, I'll need just a little bit of time to kind of resort exactly how I want to do that. And I want to run the video I ran today, but to be honest with you, I don't like trying to run 4K through OBS because it just does not like it. On my end, it just stalls. So I have to basically reproduce all of it down to 1080, which is fine. It's on your phone. It's not on your big supersized screen. And let's see here. We got 18 in listening. So Phil will rejoin us and we will make it work. And we could just stall there. Thank you again. I want to remind everyone who has been joining. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, he's working. Okay, good. Thank you for your subscriptions. They're helping. We are trying to, let me tell you about the money thing. There are there's things that are due every month, like my server is $300 a month essentially, but I'm also about to pay out for the one of the Elementor fees, which I use for 25 different websites. I basically buy the bundle, and it's hitting on Wednesday, the 11th. Is that Wednesday? Whatever, the 11th. $200. So that's what we're trying to do. All right. I was telling about the mobile technology that we had to deal with in Ukraine. So you've got a similar thing.
I got a similar thing in the heart of Florida, or the southern part of Florida, rural Florida, near a base, and I shouldn't be having the problem, but we
yeah, it happens.
I think I fixed it.
Okay.
So I was going on and on
Continue.
about a story for a while. What did you last hear?
So you're Phil Ehr, and you were in the Navy.
Yes. Okay. And I, nothing
actually
better to do with my life.
When I do live broadcasts and I do the video streams, I sometimes will forget to turn the mic on, and I go and so that was so and so, and then everyone's messaging me no microphone. Oh well, I told you the best poem ever. Hold on, let me start from the beginning. Hi everybody.
Hi everybody. My name is Phil. I'm running for Congress in the United States, retired Navy, and family guy, and am talking to you from Homestead Air Reserve Base in the southern part of Florida, outside of the Seafood Festival and near Homestead Air Reserve Base. And they've been having some F-16s and some transport aircraft doing pattern work I
Hmm.
don't hear any or see any at the moment, but we might be interrupted by the sound of freedom. That'll
I
be
can tell you, I missed the air shows in Fort Lauderdale, seeing some of the absolute best superstars that are out there doing some stuff, and the best of the best flying over the Atlantic Ocean is something to see.
yeah, yeah.
Truly missed that part. So let's so we were talking about your time in Ukraine, and also what did you just you just got back delivering
No,
a
not
vehicle?
no, not delivering a
Ah,
vehicle. It was um, helping other folks who were gathering uh, gathering the wherewithal to help veterans in rehabilitation and providing
oh,
power, providing electrical power. We haven't didn't
okay,
provide it. We did surveys or introduction of a company here in Florida who wants to arrange for donation of microgrid technology into
good.
hospital complex in Lviv on
Uh-huh.
a donated basis. We're working with them right now to an orphanage in the Carpathian Mountains, who is a new orphanage for children of soldiers on the front and those who have been displaced.
Mhm.
Um, and a school, kindergarten through 16-year-old type of school associated um, with a sports academy in now right outside of Hanson Village, southeast of Kiev.
Let's talk about the veteran support. Actually, I'll be filming an interview on Monday with my friend Mykola Melnick, who's the commander of the 47th Magura. And one of the things we are working on in the background that we can definitely tell our crowd, we're not there with the organization yet, it's in formation, but trying to build a bridge for the Americans and Brits will be part of it as well, who serve here. But as they go back, and they have, physical, trauma or severe injury, even financial situations that they, while serving here. And I love that Mikola is so adamant. Man, you can't have guys come here and fight for us, and then when they go back, like, hey, good luck. I hope it works out. Like, man, no one will want to work with us again. And
Yeah.
it's even deeper than that for him. I mean, he really feels committed to these guys. So we have some Western supporters who are also building this, and there will be an organization. But tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, tell our friends a little bit about what was accomplished here and what you see in that work right now.
In the veteran rehabilitation space, well, just
Yeah.
the
Yes.
civilians in Ukraine that are focused on helping people. I saw the prosthetic labs out in the hospital complex and the mental health uh, uh, provisions they have with people who are getting accustomed to working around a kitchen, the kind of facility. They're just their house. They have a mock house in this that veterans who have or people who had amputated limbs and prosthetics put on to be able to just learn how to live again in a civilian context. So our value, or what we intend, we didn't add any value yet, except for encouragement. But what we're intending to do is provide, a greater service of electricity that
Right.
is not dependent on, the central power station get knocked out, or in the case of the hospital, they have backup power, of course,
Right.
but not reliable backup power in the clinics like the surgical or the intensive care units and others that really need it more robustly than they have now. So we're trying to get the wherewithal to provide that in a way that is using new technology of artificial intelligence controlled generation and distribution. Think of a smart network that doesn't have a human in the loop of it. Rather,
Right.
it has AI making decisions, and you need that kind of automated AI assisted or AI executed management of electrical system. If you're going to have multiple power generation nodes and multiple power delivery modes all lashed up together, can get kind of complicated. That's the wave of the future, both in an established electrical grids as exist here in the United States, which are not really top notch as far as technology goes, but you ought to be able to get that going. So we want to bring that capability into Ukraine and see how it helps, both in this large scale, in our case, large scale of the places we've identified, this hospital, school, medium scale, and the tiny little uh, orphanage camp.
I'm putting your airforcongress.us in here.
Okay.
Just trying to get this browser to behave. It's being a little bit stubborn, and I want to say thank you to our friends. We have 20 viewers in here with us now, and of course, when we're done, it's all saved and actually mutually saved to your account as well.
Wonderful.
So for our friends here, a lot of them, they know the work that's going on in Ukraine on a certain level, but what do you, after 4 years, what do you think you carried away most that Americans need to think about when it comes to Ukraine, and more importantly, as a juxtaposition to what's going on in America and this war that's going on with Iran? Let's clash those two
Oh,
situations against each other.
okay. So first of all, I think it's important to recognize the spirit of the Ukrainian people, who are not just fighting to fight's sake; they're fighting
Hmm.
for their survival at this point. But even
Right.
before that, and currently, they're looking for a better future. They're looking for a future that's prosperous, and they recognize that the criminality that is replaced communism in Russia is brutal, and it's ruthless, and it's not the future for them. It is a warlike, angry, brutal, dog eat dog kind of world that they want nothing to do with, and neither do we
Right.
here, in most of us anyway, in the United States. We don't want those with the riches to keep getting richer off in an unjust, illegitimate way, as is going on in Putin's Russia. And
Exactly.
that's so they're the Ukrainian people aren't gonna give up. And with all we hear reporting here in the United States, driven by people with interests for us to give up, for them to give
Right.
up,
Right.
that says, "Hey, things are going bad. Um, they're not going to be able to hold out." It's the same sort of pushing of a narrative that we saw in the very first days when it should have been a 3-day war, the three-way occupation. No, Zelensky and he was just the president at the time, but very important position. And everybody else followed him when he said, "Don't give me a ticket, give me bullets. Don't give me an
Right.
airplane ticket."
Right.
And that's what we see. That's what every time I've gone over it, that's precisely what I see. See people devoted to the war effort. I see lots of people getting on with their lives outside of the war, putting it aside in their lives. So you see bicyclists in their lycra from time to time, doing their exercise on the streets,
Yeah.
going to the shop. Um, uh, but I guess on this last trip, there was a difference that I noticed, and it could have been just my very small sample of living, or seeing things. But I saw multiple funerals. One funeral with two soldiers being buried, and the whole square in Lviv
Hmm.
stopped. Same kind of thing when I was visiting Kiev. Um, and
Hmm.
that just the omnipresence of death and destruction is, it wears on people in the dead of the winter, even. So,
Yeah.
for a a guy from America, coming in to do what you do, and you check into a hotel, very nice as hotels, those businesses keep going, and people like me and the
Right.
other folks come in, they patronize these businesses, and when you check in, they always show you where the shelter is, where the bomb shelter is, and that's a point that I would tell anybody around here is just, okay, it's like normal, but not normal. Not normal from our
Yeah.
experience here in Florida. Yeah.
Well, I know that one of the things is that 4 years ago when I was in Lviv at the first part of the full scale, for the viewers, the person I was working with, fled. We flew out February 23rd after waiting every day for a month. Every day was a 5-minute departure bag and everything else. Just you know, um, not really sure when things would happen, if they were going to happen. It was very likely that it was going to. Flew out to February 23rd. War breaks out. Immediately right back into the ticket mode. Came right back in March, and I arrived back on the 16th. And within days, I was at one of the first funerals at the Garrison Church there in Lviv, which is the most common place where the funerals are held in Lviv. And I um, I didn't go inside in the first few funerals I went, but I went to many funerals there in that first month, and I still actually have contact with some of the family members. And now, like you said, 4 years later, it sets in, and even more important, the fact that it's in winter. You know, that field of Mars that is where Lukashen's cemetery is. It's a field to the side. They had no burials there yet. There was an area inside the main cemetery people could be buried, and the soldiers, and that field is pretty much full. And the war continues. So yeah, it's a very, very intense feeling. You know, when I finished my broadcast with Mark Zaid last night, rockets were immediately launched here. We had 3 salvos on the country immediately after. And the fact that Russia has not tried to stop this war because Putin can't stop the war. Um, what do you think with your mission to go to Congress? I want our viewers to really dial into that right now. What is the mission for you to get back in Congress?
Well, the
What is
mission.
the objective to get the Congress back in sane hands? Let's hit the ground hard on that one right now.
Okay, well,
How
I'm.
important that is.
It's critical for U.S. national and international stability. We have a government in the United States that is all about chaos, and
Hmm.
I believe incompetence in the way they are going about whatever whatever uh, foul policies they come up with. They're even incompetent in doing that. Um,
Hmm.
but we need to get back to a situation where we are working with people both with internally in the United States in a collegial fashion, a
Hmm.
neighborly fashion, and also in a neighborly fashion with our friends and allies in the Northern Hemisphere as well as the Western Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere, just all around. We
Right.
have a big tradition that our future past generations have um, s- sacrificed for to put off war, to not settle issues by force, but by other
Right.
means. And we've seen in my country, we're pushing the button for war way too much. And then when we do it, we're not even recognizing who's our real friends and who's not. Who's not. We just got into a war with Iran, and it's whether you like it or not, or whether you approve of how it got there or not. We are in a shooting war right now, and then
Right.
there's some clarifying things about um, a violent war of one force, the Iranian forces versus the American forces. Who's your friend and who's Who's not your friend? Sometimes friends can be more loyal if they are not enthusiastically pushing you along. But just take the example of Ukraine and Russia. The contrast there. Um,
Right.
the American president cozies up to Putin and wants, clearly he wants to be on his
Soften
side.
sanctions. Fucker actually softened sanctions with the
Yeah.
excuse of, well, we're going to help India a little bit,
And Russian forces continue to, target, identify American locations of American ships, American radars, American Air Force units and Army units that have been deployed, according to
Hmm.
reporting, which is entirely believable, consistent with the Russian behavior generally. So Russia is targeting us, and Ukraine, who has not been supported well by the American administration, Ukraine is offering to help, and they're offering to help not just in words but in deeds because they have the expertise that is built on the bloodshed that's happening in the country,
That's right.
and that's showing who our friends are, and it's the Ukrainians, people who are devoted to honesty in business and in government with a democratic ideal. Um, and you have the Russians who are just the opposite. And yet, yes.
Yeah, savages. I mean, people don't like
So
some of that language typically, but they have conducted themselves as savages. Therefore, the application of the word fits.
right. So you ask why I'm running for Congress. That's the
Right.
that dynamic was foreseeable back in 2016 or 2015 when Mr. Trump came down his escalator and started running. And
Mhm.
that was the prompt for me to become politically active way back then. And this campaigning to win the hearts and minds of my fellow Americans to see what's going on, to wipe through the fog of disinformation and lies and propaganda is critical to what I'm all about. This is my country. I have responsibility for it because I'm a citizen, one of hundreds of millions, but still, that's it. I'm in a position where I can do it, so I'm doing it. Um, yeah.
So the opponent, is the incumbent is Carlos Gimenez.
Yep.
He is basically a Trump bootlicker. And although he was born in Havana, but you know, my notes and dossier work says that you did some work in that area between Cuba and Florida that I think really matters. Tell us many, many years ago, one of the missions that you did and why I think it's so important for Cuban
Yep.
Americans and
Yeah.
the compatriots in the South to remember what you did.
Okay, so this is a long time ago. I'm 65 years old right now. I've been retired since 2008, but as a 19-year-old sailor in 1980, my
Hmm.
very first mission in the Navy was the Mariel boatlift when Castro emptied his prisons and let other people, families, anybody who wanted to get on small boats out of the port of Mariel, which is near Havana, and make
Hmm.
their way north to freedom in the United States. Now, people were so moved and wanting to get out of there that these small boats, fishing vessels, or anything that floated, were overcrowded, dangerous at sea, and the Navy was tasked by then our president was Jimmy Carter to go out and rescue these people so that they
Right.
wouldn't to save some lives and bring them to the United States. Now that part of the mission, bringing them to the United States, was very controversial. The Republicans of the day did not like that at all. So we had the partisan fight over that mission. But I was part of that mission. I was on what some of the Cuban survivors or refugees today called a mothership. It was really an LPD-12, the
Okay.
USS Shreveport, where smaller boats would come to ours, and folks would get off and go into this big cavern of a well deck. I remember people with tattoos, clearly out of prison. Okay, when you say prison in Cuba, you don't know this breadth of criminality or the real criminality of it. A lot of people in Cuban prisons are there because of free speech issues or
Yeah.
association issues or business issues that in our country would be normal, free and fair trade, but not sanctioned by the communist government. So you never know who's in there. But there'd be some murderers and rapists and all that kind of stuff as well. That
Right.
those people that need help, and all of them, including families, would be coming to our shores. So there's a lot of turmoil in the city of Miami because of that. I won't get into that part of it, but my part of it
Sure.
was seeing the, one vivid scene is a family, mom and a dad. I was focused on the mom with two kids. One is probably early teens. The other was like 7 or 8 years old. She was holding their hands. Her husband was by her
Mhm.
side, looking out into our well deck. She was on a platform, getting ready to be processed and moved on to a bed and a food, and then onward into the Florida Keys. She was just stunned, but you could see on her face the relief of being saved from horrible deaths at sea, and the thankfulness to America. Now, that is just a searing experience for a young sailor, and because the swells and the waves were immense, probably 10-foot swells. For small boats, that's significant. The sun was hot. I mean, it's blistering sun. So we actually
Yeah.
saved those people's lives, and in doing so, we repudiated what Castro was trying to do to the United States. He was trying to show us as being weak, that us as being all talk and no help for people. Well, we helped people.
Right.
And so that was a win-win. And then later on, when the Reagan administration succeeded took over from Carter, the Republicans generally embraced the Cuban refugees. And so that became a win-win-win mission. What an inspiration for a young sailor like me. And at that point, I knew that I would continue in a career in the United States Navy because of the freedom that was provided by our country and our Navy in that
Right.
time. Flash forward to today, where I'm running for Congress in the Florida Keys and in Miami. I run into Marielitos, as they call these refugees, or the children of them, and the children from the
Yeah.
Peter Pan and other waves of migration out of communist Cuba. It's not just migration; it's people who are risking everything: life, limb, children, futures, family, themselves. Um, it's extremely inspirational to see that, but that inspiration is built on a tragedy of
Exactly.
tragedy in Cuba itself.
And Gimenez also sits on the House Armed Services Committee and Homeland Security Committee.
Right,
He did not serve in the military. He was a
right.
first responder in the southern Florida area, and those are important roles. But if you wouldn't mind, explain the difference in your opinion and experience on your voice in that seat versus the fact that he's sitting in that seat as a civilian who never served.
Well, there's just so many things to say here. First of all, he's abandoned his people. He talks and talks about Cuba Libre, but he doesn't do anything vote-wise or materially to make it happen.
Mhm.
He in his role as, let's just take Homeland Security. He has when the Trump administration came in and said we're going to round up all the people who are like the bad guys. Well, they didn't do that. They did more than that. They were taking
That's right.
their racial profiling brown people, harassing them, and often in my district and elsewhere in the country that makes better headlines than in my district, but it happens here too. The brutality of unprofessional federal police, often masked, therefore secret police, dragging people out of a vehicle and throwing them, in detention. Sometimes they're wrong, and sometimes they're, let go of, hours or days later. Not acceptable behavior by the these secret police. But they're also and we have these federal detention centers, which are the same kind of thing as the concentration camps were in the beginning of
Right.
the World War II era. Just horrific, awful, bad conditions reported. And Carlos Gimenez is was nowhere to be found for many months. Finally, he broke down and he went on an oversight visit in Alligator Alcatraz, a famous one around here, and
Right.
in Krome, Krome, another federal detention center around here, and another one. And he came out of each of those saying to the press, "Hey, I went in there because there's a lot of hoopla about it, but the conditions in there are just fine. It's not a Hilton hotel. It's not expected to be a hotel, and so that's okay." Well, guess what happened? Well, those reports continued, but a
That's
Cuban
right.
man, a few years older than Carlos, who had been living for 20 years in Key Largo, who was there, he died in that prison because of
Yeah.
lack of medical attention. So
Right.
that's one case of many cases of abuse and great shame on our country for not having the transparency or the guts to open and show your work. No,
Yeah.
they're having a secret. Due process is guaranteed by everybody, whether you're a citizen or not within the
That's
United
right.
States. They are
That's the
denying,
Constitution and upheld by the Supreme Court.
of course. And then, but we have an administration that's rogue and it's out of control. So that's another reason I'm running to that guy, Carlos Gimenez, my opponent, is he's grossly negligent, neglectful, and even complicit and participating in the lies that perpetuate this brutal behavior
Mm.
on American streets. That and this the finally we had Secretary Nome fired this week by, by
Yes.
and that's a win for us. It's also
It actually
exposing
is. Yeah.
it exposes Carlos Gimenez's gross negligence in not stopping the Secretary Noem's leadership of
Correct.
brutality
This is
on the
this
street.
this is the problem of their group behavior, is that you need someone who will say no when unreasonable and wrong and even criminal things happen, or corrupt things either, and he's not going to be that guy. He's a bootlicker,
Yep.
just straight up bootlicker. And so, yeah, I have a little list of some of his, shall we say, crimes against the people. January 6, 2021, voted to invalidate the election. Hours after the violent insurrection on the Capitol, Gimenez voted to omit Arizona and/or Pennsylvania from the counting of the presidential electors, which could have altered the outcome of the election. The PAC Act 2022 voted against the toxic exposed support for the toxic exposed veterans. He voted for the One Big Beautiful Bill. The law cuts over 1 trillion from healthcare programs, described as the largest rollback of federal support for healthcare in American history. It goes on. The law blocks implementation of national minimum staffing requirements for nursing homes. The bill did not extend enhanced premium tax cuts for ACA marketplace plans. He voted when the government shutdown. When the government shutdown threatened food assistance for 42 million Americans, he sided with the House Republican leadership for continuing resolutions that Democrats blocked, absent the ACA subsidy. On the Epstein test, he voted for the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
Well, hold on now. There's so much. Can I interrupt you to say? Can I
Go
interrupt
for
you
it.
to say on the Epstein? He's gone on television multiple times to say, "Hey, Americans are over the Epstein case. Only a few
Exactly.
of us are interested." This guy protects pedophiles. He's protecting the exposure of people that should be in jail,
Exactly.
need to be in jail.
Exactly.
He's not respecting any of the victims, and even on Cuba. Cuba, we hadn't finished that yet.
Yeah.
I'm for regime change in Cuba that the Cuban people own, and they do. And guess what? Carlos says that he says it to stoke up fear, but he's trading with the enemy, so to speak. He is
Hmm.
taking campaign contributions from people who do business with the regime, and that's it's the hypocrisy that is just inexplicable. And it's he's been doing that for years, so we're exposing that in this campaign as well. Carlos Gimenez taking money from Mr. Crowley, who runs Crowley Transportation and
Hmm.
Maritime Transportation, and he won't denounce it. I
Of
say
course not.
we need to smother that regime in order to liberate the people, and
Right.
he trades with them. He props up the regime. He has called for a stoppage of all remittances to families. I think that's wrong. That the remittances, the small amounts of money from uh, Cubans who are here in Florida and elsewhere in the United States, back to their family in Cuba to help buy medicine, to help them buy medicine for their grandmothers or some things their children need. Those small amounts do not prop up the regime. The big ticket items that Carlos is associated with through Crowley and others is it's just wrong, and it shows the lies that he is.
To me, my biggest concern with someone like him, if I would just get really, really straight to the point, and we've talked about this before, is that, when you're not willing to stand up against the MAGA machine, um, then you're going to be complicit in whatever the group behavior does.
Right.
So
Right.
the Jan 6 part alone is a fucking deal killer forever,
Yep.
because there are some Republicans who will say, whoa, 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 hey, wait, yeah, yeah, we're not doing this. We're not doing that. When you can't do that, you have abdicated your role in Congress, and therefore you got to go do something else. Go to the pickets, go stand out and protest, go do whatever you go be a political aide, whatever you want, but you can't be in Congress because you're no longer a check and balance.
Yeah, and then that guy even recently is defending his actions on January 6th, 2021, or yeah,
Yeah,
2021. Yeah, get my year right.
yeah.
Yeah, so he's
Feels
out
so
of touch.
recent. It's so long
He's
ago, but so
he's so
recent.
out of touch with his duties as a congressman and out of touch with the people of his district. He doesn't even live in this district. He lives in
Right.
the posh downtown part of Miami, not out here where working class and farmers and people in the Florida Keys,
Yeah.
fishermen and commuters, people living their lives, trying to get ahead in the world. Look, this is an abhorrent example of a congressman needs to go. You mentioned the Homeland Security Committee. Yeah, negligent. And
Yeah.
Gnome's, firing exposes that negligence.
Yeah.
Armed Services Committee. He's the type of guy who says more of this, please, in response to the unlawful killing of suspected drug runners that were operating, well south of Cuba, not coming to the United States. So let's just kill them. So that's
Yeah.
that's that's what he does, and he doesn't know the military. He's not been a proponent that I've seen, and that people who watch him more closely than I do seen of military readiness. If he were,
Yeah.
then he would be supporting um, the he would not be supporting uh, Trump administration's proposed cuts to the veterans benefits. He would not be supporting this crazy idea of let's build a huge big battleship and put all our eggs in that one target. He
Exactly.
doesn't understand modern warfare as well. His comments about
Oh yeah.
yesterday or a couple of days ago about the veterans who were lost in Iran's attack on our base. It was callous and very reminiscent of an armchair admiral who doesn't care. He's playing games with lives. Um, so he's
Yeah, and I'm gonna be very clear. I don't think, like, I'm a civilian. I don't think that there's an automatic thing that says civilians don't understand, but veterans understand. And the fact that he's on the Armed Services Committee and Homeland Security Committee, and then basically talks out his ass, is a danger to the United States of America. It's a danger to those citizens in Florida. It's a danger to all citizens in the United States, plus, of course, our allies. You have done that service, and let's bring back to your NATO, your service in that specific command. We have Donald Trump has gone out of his way to shit all over NATO. I wasn't say NATO because I'm so Ukraine. Hey, NATO, to all of our friends from NATO.
Hey, I'm a NAFO.
Yeah, you're NATO. But as a guy who served, directly related to the NATO work, um, the fact that Gimenez won't stand up to Trump,
Yeah.
and that Trump is basically annihilating those alliances, makes him a danger. So let's get back to that part, especially with the fight against Iran, especially like you just said, that Russia is targeting with intelligence our assets. How dangerous it is. Just, I mean, we're gonna beat this dead horse.
Okay, so I think you're asking a little bit about my experience, and
Your experience, yeah, please.
and then how what I think as in light of that, how what I think is going on
The
with it.
upgrade.
Upgrade.
Yeah, it's the upgrade. You're the upgrade,
I would be the upgrade for the people of South Florida. You
That's
betcha,
right.
because they're not getting representation now. They're getting incompetence on the armed
That's
services,
right.
Homeland Security. Yeah, got that. And so back to and to include Ukraine. One thing that drew me to Ukraine was that in the latter part of my career, I was on a staff of a series of four-star admirals, and I had the staff responsibility to develop that four stars strategy for naval forces interacting with forces in a large geographic area, to
Right.
include the Black Sea region, Ukraine, Romania, Bulgaria. Um, not so much Russia. We didn't really have much to do with that, but we did go staff talks with them. But Ukraine. So it was
Right.
very rewarding to me when delivering humanitarian aid in Ukraine to stop my van at the north shore of the Black Sea and look over and think, well, wow, I was in a desk job in London helping to shape U.S. naval and military policy generally,
Yeah.
following so our civilian political guidance. But it was very rewarding to see that Ukraine was a little bit more prepared now because of what we did, and that the rule of law being extended into the Black Sea was, getting a hold. Now it's asunder because of the war. But and I'm oh by the way, I'm glad the Black Sea is at the bottom of the Black Sea. The Russian Black Sea fleet is sunk. That's kind of cool. I brought back some stamps commemorating that. Just saying.
Yeah.
So that was my penultimate tour. My last tour in service was with NATO. Some NATO has a command structure of itself. Member
Yeah.
nations like ourselves and the Brits and the Dutch and the Spanish and the Turk, all of them contribute personnel to NATO activities. And my last tour was I was the senior U.S. officer in a NATO command that had responsibility to train forces, combined military forces of our NATO allies, and sometimes national forces on their own in electronic warfare. So my activity called JUKES, Joint Electronic Warfare Core Staff, it's a bureaucratic term, but think of it as Electronic Warfare Center of Excellence. We would
I love it.
put we would generate a hostile electromagnetic environment, jamming, spoofing, false flag type operations in an operating area, and challenge friendly forces to
Hmm.
work together, effectively fight together, and we would try to be the bad guys and disrupt all that. So that was the training that we did, and we ended up taking that training last part of my tour there into operations in Bosnia and in Afghanistan. But the most of it was training. Most of it
Right.
was working on the hard work and the rewarding work of helping the Dutch work with the Spanish, work with the Germans, work with the Americans in together. And that is America's superpower. That's the Western world's superpower. That's the
Well,
superpower
yeah.
of the values-driven population of our world. And we're
I
thrilled
wrote a
to help.
piece about 2 months ago. I wrote a piece, and it was entirely based on a comment from a German official, not a big probably a Bundestag member, who said, "Well, you can always get the fuck off our bases." Something to the effect. Hold on, and I just started researching like how many bases, America was settled on. That if Europe said today, you know what, we're kind of done, and people don't know like the Rome statutes and others that really it's not our bases. These are bases that we are able to use in these areas. And literally, if Atlas shrugged, I hate that Russian lady, by the way, who wrote that. But anyway, if they did, what would the consequences be? And we would cease to be a superpower at every level. Economically, of course, but on the military side, it would especially be that. So, how grave do you see the circumstances now with Trump threatening Denmark over Greenland? Trying to go it alone, and these attacks with just Israel. And actually, someone said, let me ask Patty's question was in here. Hold on, Patty. Where did your question go? It was in here. What are your thoughts about our continued help of Netanyahu's Israel campaign of chaos? So we'll tie that in. Um, let's talk about the importance of that and why uh, let me hand it to you like that. The importance of trying to, confront our NATO alliance in a different way.
So Trump is destroying the NATO alliance, and he has
Right.
he's messaged that before he was elected the first time. You see him bully himself, even in the pictures with with the class pictures with a Montenegro president or somebody. He's
Right.
just a bully and destructive presence. And
Hmm.
with the claimed excuse of wanting to have the NATO members contribute more of their GDP to defense spending. Now,
Hmm.
that is a bipartisan American objective for a long time to ask the Europeans to pull more of the weight of the alliance, and it hadn't been working. So a lot of people are giving Trump credit for that outcome of more, but it's not it. But it's a false credit because in the process of doing that, he has destroyed the credibility of the United States in the alliance, of the United States with our potential friends, let alone our current friends. It's not just
Hmm.
spats that he's having with the alliance. It is a fundamental breakage, as Prime Minister Carney from Canada has pointed out at Munich, and many others have as well. It is forcing the Europeans to do everything that they had been kind of toying with, of setting out their own their own defense production, their own strategic vision, going back to a world where we're not we're not really operating as as people looking for common values of democracy and freedom and human rights and regulated free trade for the betterment of our people. No, it is destruction. It's destruction of the World War II legacy that was
Right.
left for us, and we held it together all through the Cold War. And this guy has just thrown it away. That is a background to maybe another part of the question. You're one of the audience members that you asked about Netanyahu and Israel and how they have led us into this conflict. Well, there are different reports, and time and some historians will sort it out. But if you take Secretary Rubio at his word when he said we attacked Iran because Netanyahu was about to, and we didn't want to suffer the blow. I'm trying to go through this logic. That makes sense. To go through the suffer the consequences of a backlash on us without us being part of the initial attack. I
Right.
think that's what the reporting was. So it was a preemptive attack on a situation that was not an imminent threat. It's a made-up imminence of a real threat. So Iran has been a real threat. Iran has been a state sponsor of terror, and it's abhorrent, and they need to change. But what has not happened was there was not an immediate escalation of a threat to the United States, either in their nuclear program, which Trump claimed unverified to have obliterated the nuclear capability. Sure, they continue to have an intent, but an intent is not a credible threat. You need a threat really to be legitimate in a first strike. We made a first strike, and I'm very pleased that Khamenei is gone. Anytime a dictator is gone, it's good. But in the operational excellence of U.S. forces in conducting that is again, and again, superb. And I'm so very proud to have been part of training that force, part of that force that is able to deliver that lethal effect. But it's built on a lack of a strategy, on an
And
unclear objectives,
that's a really,
and
yeah, it's a really,
and that right, and
yeah,
that is the lie and the weakness of our
right.
political leadership. Our political leadership, that includes my opponent, who's on the Armed Services Committee, should know better than to allow the commander in chief to take forces into combat when there's no plan. There's no
Right.
after plan. There's no clear objective. We don't know
Yeah,
what we're
I
doing.
said this about the assassination of Soleimani, and in like I wish we didn't have to keep saying these things, but I think people need to hear it sometimes. Do I have any sympathy for the individual? No. But the strategy of it did not exist. It was, oh look, I'm gonna go. Oh look what I did today.
Right.
Oh look, and now look what I did today. And there's no follow up. There's no plan. There's no course of action. And even, I think it was laid bare really by Hegseth, yeah, who is a complete downgrade from Lloyd Austin III. 4 stars on the black man's shoulders. Um, and he went out and said basically we're going to annihilate them. Trump said we're going to annihilate them. And then we get this false sympathy about the poor Iranian people. They don't give a fuck about Iranian people. They just like playing this game. And I think that that's a big failure in the made up strategy if they come up with one tomorrow. Is you have to want to show that you like back with Cuba, same thing with Cuba. You have to want to show that if you're trying to make such a change, at least show at every possible level of your strategy that it's about the will of the people that you're trying to genuinely support. And that is not in any of this rhetoric, no matter
It,
what excuse they come up with.
yeah. It is. It's born of Trump's incompetence and frustration, lashing out.
Mhm.
Now, it's very legitimate to ask, why is he
Where's the
lashing out
Epstein
now?
files?
Bingo. Bingo, bingo, bingo. And what's going on with the economy? What's going on with healthcare costs? What's going
Right,
on
right,
with housing in my district? What's going on with clean water in my district? All of
right.
these things that
Yeah, yeah.
impact people, teacher pay. All these things make life harder and harder on the American people, so we make a war. I mean, that's a legitimate line of criticism. But just taking that, setting all that aside and going
Right.
straight to the military aspects of it, this man has frustration and he's lashing out and he's working on this on several theories, unstable theories like, oh, we get rid of the regime and the Iranian people are going to rise up. Well, they might, but there's no ongoing support for that. We should
Right.
have built that ongoing support as part of it, debated it in Congress, or somehow debated it in such a way that preserves the operational surprise and the tactical surprise of a strike. Should we do that? But two things can be held true at the same time, legitimately true. One is good, Khomeini's gone. Good that leadership was decapitated. Bad that it was done illegally in accordance, not legally in an international law context with no imminent threat, and not legally in a U.S. context with the scale of the committing war, committing troops to this scale of war, a war of choice, war for nation building. Apparently, we don't really know. He's not saying.
Right.
And the same thing, Chris, needs to be said about Venezuela and about rhetoric on Cuba.
Absolutely.
And these things, there's a big Cuban American community here in South Florida, as we all know.
Right.
Of those people that are yelling hardest and most loudly and most passionately and with most anger about the Cuban regime and their right to be angry about the Cuban regime. They say, one theory holds, you get rid of Castro, the old man Castro, who's still the formal head of the armed forces, and you get rid of Diaz-Canel, the current leader of the country. Get rid of those two,
Right.
and it's like cutting off the head of the snake. Everything else will fall into place. That is a statement of hope. Hope is not a strategy. Hope will not survive the scrutiny of a debate in Congress, let alone the reality on the ground or in the air or in the sea in Cuba, in the United States. So I
My
want
brother,
you
my
to get
my
Reg.
good brother from Houston, Egberto. Good to see you, Egberto. Actually, all of our great friends. We got some wonderful friends in this audience.
Oh,
And
good.
if I don't know you in the audience, I love you anyway. But Egberto says Iran does not have to win. They just need to blow up refineries and ships to destroy the world's economy. So, so let me change that a little bit and draw from that. Actually, when we went to war to destroy Iraq, the first thing he did was disbanded, the services there. He like all of it, Bush, I should say. Um, and we're fighting a completely different fight now. I wrote up a piece this week about what we were facing when the invasion happened in 2003 and what we're facing now. And Iran, not to compliment it, but just be aware of its resources and the difference in the fight can play what I call cat chess. And cat chess means like the United States will play by the rules of warfare because that's how all of it's wired. It's wired to use, you know, um, the same boats, the same tanks, the same helicopter rides as before. And Iran has a completely different way of doing its warfare with proxies in the region and its ability to fuck around with oil, no less. Um, let's capitalize a little bit on that difference and explain to our, especially with your experience, explain the difference to our viewers of what that fight's going to look like compared to the one that was against Iraq.
Okay, so Iran is what state sponsor of terrorism for a long time. Iraq was not. It was. It had
True,
its own.
exactly.
It had its own. Nefarious activities, but it wasn't to the extent of funding Hezbollah in Lebanon or
Right.
Hamas down in Palestine or other places.
Hmm.
So you can look at it like Iran, a theocratic, dictatorship, was being sneaky about their warfare and the Western world being straightforward about our warfare. I mean, those
Right.
are broad generalizations, and people will say, well, what about the CIA? What about, SAS and all that? Well,
Sure.
yeah, there's some truth to that. But in the broad main sense of conflict, Iran is underhanded and America is straightforward. This is why I object strongly to U.S. Um, Homeland Security police officers masking themselves, covering their identity, and going into American neighborhoods and ripping people from their homes without
Right.
showing themselves. If they were proud of the legitimate work that they do, then they would
Mhm.
be open about it and open to the scrutiny of the American people.
Right.
But no, they hide. Iran hides, our secret police hides. They're both wrong. And in our case, we need to do something, clean house inside of the Department of Homeland Security on that kind of activity. And in the international case, with respect to Iran, we need to get rid of the RGC. And I'm falling into the trap too of saying, let's hope that the Iranian people will take matters into their own hands and get something get some change in that country. Hope,
Right.
again, is not a strategy. It is, but we're committed as a country there, particularly when we have the Congress unable to put limits on the administration. They just had a vote in the House and the Senate just this last week to fail to curb um, curb this war. There are still other constraints that Congress has on its you know on the agenda, but the initial expression of Congress after Trump's attack with Netanyahu on Iran is is not to constrain, but to let it to let the chaos reign. Do you
Oh,
hear the jets
I
in
hear
front of me?
delicious. I hear delicious sounds.
F-16s. Let me tell you, from Homestead Air Reserve Base, my buds.
Yeah.
That's great.
I've had 4 years of no aircraft above me. Occasionally something, but mostly never. I feel like I'm going to be like that unfrozen caveman lawyer. Your Thunderbirds, they frighten.
Well, I was as I was traveling around Ukraine. It was not this last trip. It was I think it was January 2023, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, right,
I was by myself in my van, and I needed to. Sometimes you can park. I was going between cities. I was outside the curfew, but I wanted to stop and rest. And I had a camper van, so I could do that. And I go around
right.
this parking lot. And I think this is decent neighborhood. I'll just stop here. And I stopped, and then I looked out, and I saw a helicopter, like a helicopter behind a wall. And I thought, this is not good because helicopters are targets, and the Ukrainian military probably wouldn't want me just hanging out there either. So I went and found another spot. But there
Right.
are air capabilities in Ukraine, and it is in the it's in the fleets of drones that are handmade, that are bought outside and produced inside, a whole mixture of stuff. I happen to be in a command post near a command post on the front lines. The command post was not on the front lines, but the drones that the commander that I was visiting was commanding was on the front lines, and they had basically three kinds of drones. One kind of drone drop supplies to his troops that were out in the field. And another kind of drone would be a reconnaissance drone. Another one would be the kind that would go and just drop a bomb on Russians. You'd be looking for them in their positions, and that's the sense of the air war.
Here's the air war.
Yeah, yeah, that is one form of the air war. But I'm talking about the small drone infantry that is
Sure.
well east of those of the you know, the deep red is where what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The deep red.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, and that,
Mhm.
but that's where modern warfare is. Hegseth doesn't get it. Trump apparently doesn't get it, or else he wouldn't order a battleship named after himself. And certainly, my opponent Carlos Gimenez
Is that
is,
the USS Flatfoot?
yeah, something like that. Or
USS Bone Spurs?
Bone Spurs, I think, is probably the better term. Yeah.
Captain Bone Spurs, that's my nickname. Actually, yeah, yeah, that's another example of why I can't I just despise these guys. I'm gonna be very clear. I'm not like what I think of as an unconditional military worshiper. If someone's a veteran, I don't always know what they did. And actually that's gotten more in tune with veterans who say, thank you for understanding that. I mean, thank you for your service. I know people who did civil services that were probably, far superior than had, big chunk of the people in Congress who happen to have at least some military service by their name in the R category. And they overinflate it. But Captain Pete, I mean, what a downgrade again. Like I said, it just bugs the piss out of me that we had General Lloyd Austin III, who built an entire, the Ukraine Defense Contact Group, an alliance of countries that are not in formal alliance with Ukraine, and yet built a defense alliance to help Ukraine, absent NATO involvement.
Right.
And that's leadership, which is the
It
reason why I
is.
wanted to have you come on here.
Well, and thank you. I was again very privileged to be part of that sort of thing in my time with conferences at Ramstein Air Base in Germany,
Yeah.
building those kind of international coalitions at the military level so that we could fight together. So we coordinated our capabilities that are being contributed by various members of a coalition of the willing or an alliance for effect. And in my time, it was Afghanistan and Bosnia, but yeah, that same sort of thing. General Austin grew up in that environment. He knows how to do it. Our whole institution knows how to do that. And for this political leadership to come in saying we want to destroy the deep state, he's referring to those people who have served for and protected our freedom in our country and our alliances for generations, tossing that away. Gimenez is part of that, and I have no time for him.
I could keep you here all day, but I definitely want to get one more good thing on the table, and I'd rather you come back and keep this audience happy with a regular visit with you. Because the season is so far from over. Um, one of the ways we met was that we were both focused on disinformation,
Right.
and the weaponization of the information space. And now we're entering 2026 midterms era. And when we first talked, AI was not a component in that. It was troll armies and,
Yeah.
hacking, hack and dumps, But now we have AI really investing both from the Chinese side and the Russian side. And of course, your average user can do it. And Elon Musk now runs Twitter. So when we first talked, that wasn't true, but now it is. Take that boat and run with that.
All right, so we are in an information war. That is the form of warfare, the character of warfare today. It's very clear that our minds, our cognition, is the battleground. It's the primary battle. There are others like the actual physical on the ground in Ukraine. Yes, that's real. In the actual, there are things that are in the physical world, but in the world of thought, in our understanding of the world, that is the place where we're being attacked. And this, the sci-fi
Right.
novels of 1984 and the other novels and science fiction that just destroyed all of our that predicted where we are now, of government telling us what to think, telling us to discard our own eyes, believe we see, believe we're told. That's real, and it's happening. It's happening on an industrial scale. It's happening by both government actors and people like Elon Musk, who and others like the Facebook guys that want profit over, a commitment to just to allowing truth to come in there. What the top of
Yeah.
my feed is not good reporting, which I would naturally go to. No, it is pushed out Barron Trump. Comes on my Twitter feed a lot. Like, what the heck is Barron Trump doing here? Well, it's because he's given some kind of a push by the log code. And they're feeding folks that don't have a lot of time to we're doing the feeding folks lies. People who don't have time to follow politics or to follow the security issues as much as we do. There are people who run two jobs or even one job, trying to raise a family, trying to protect their children and themselves from the hatred that is Democrats versus Republicans and pointing fingers at each other rather than working together
Right.
in a leadership fashion. And that's one of the good things about military service and other services generally in uniform is that you set that aside for a to define mission work on, and that has a way of, of reinforcing the commonality rather than differences.
Yeah.
That's part of what my campaign is all about, to make sure, or my service is all about, is to help those folks like us, and even people that have been voting for Trump for a few times and now feel rightfully abandoned, rightfully deceived, and give them an opportunity to not be browbeaten, but to look to the future. So when I go into Democrat, when I go to Republican spaces, I make sure not to criticize, not to condemn, but to look to the future. What do we want actually in the future? Do we want the same kind of lies and manipulation and profiteering off the corrupt practices, and you know off of the backs of workers who don't have the basic rights to share in the fruits of their labor? No, we want equitable autonomy.
Yeah, and let's do it this way as a final thought here. If you were sitting in a cafe and you had a MAGA voter across from you, or you had a very staunch Republican, like you're in North Florida. I know those counties.
Okay,
You're in
I'm in
North
South Florida
Florida,
now, but yeah, I know North Florida
right?
also.
Let's say you're in North Florida, and
Okay,
you've got one of those cafes where the voting is 87% red.
yeah.
Talk to his or her needs right now.
Well, how is your healthcare bill going at the moment? Are you able to stay in your job? You feeling like you can make it, going forward with your family? And how is your insurance on your house? And those answers will be negative. They're not. You are
Yeah,
not assured of a prosperous future. Why are they
yeah,
not assured of a prosperous future? Because folks like my opponent now, Carlos Gimenez, and everybody who thinks like him, it's a dog eat dog world, and screw you. The social contract doesn't really exist because it should be in private hands. Not government doesn't have a role, they would say, in things as basic as making sure that veterans are taken care of it in mental health and in their health care. Uh, making Right now there's a proposed rule that is going to strip a lot of veterans who are getting disability compensation of their cost because of complete big change of, if you're getting your medicine and it's working, well then compensation. If you get a prosthetic on your leg and you can walk again, you don't get the compensation for having your leg blown off. That's
yeah,
the thinking that is going into the proposed new rule that has a lot of us veterans really upset. Take the veterans and set that aside and go for look at the healthcare of a family that I know who has seen. One woman is on the Affordable Care Act, and the other, and your partner, a man, is her husband is gets his health care via his corporation. He doesn't have the health care benefits for his wife. Her um, health care bill is almost triple of what it was uh, last year, and that
right.
is, it's just, they don't know where to go, and they're going without it, or they're going for a junk bond. So they're not going to have the cover for, cancer, for example.
Yeah,
Uh, those kinds of real consequential decisions you're threatening and actually putting more people in the poorhouse, putting more
yeah,
people on the streets. And I see it in my district. You have more people living out of cars, more people on the
yeah,
streets than homeless care centers are overwhelmed, looking for more money. And where is it not coming from? It's not coming from taxpayers. and the taxpayers want to be able to know that their tax dollars are going for the common good. That's kind of what the government is all about, the common good. Balance, not being too much, not being too little, but we're not in balance right now. Gone way too far in cuts of important things and enrichment for those who are contributing, but doing it in a way that exploits other people. So lots of work to do there.
Yeah, it's a ton to do there, and I will remind the people of some of the most important words you can never have. Ready? We, the people of the United States of America, in order to form a more perfect union. It's not they, the corporations, he, the oligarch, they, the technocrats, they, the tech bros. It's we, the people.
And, the new Congress under Democratic control, which I will be a part of, is going to have a forward-looking, reform-minded agenda. And we are going to plug up as many of the gaps that has allowed this country to get in the awful situation it is now with our domestic decision-making, where we don't have really self-government. We have corporate government.
To establish justice, to ensure domestic tranquility. When was the last time you remember America having domestic tranquility?
Well, I don't know, but I do know that is the, domestic tranquility, that's always a goal. And what I do know that police officers all around the country, when they're acting professionally, that's their mandate. Promote, serve and protect for tranquility's sake in neighborhoods, and with the brutality and the militarization of civil police forces, that's going in the wrong direction.
To provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare.
Provide for the common defense. Well, yeah, what are we defending? We're defending freedom. And when freedom is defended from external forces, that's what we're all about. But there is the politicians have led us to believe we are enemies within. They are enemies within. No, my friend out there, or colleague, or neighbor, my neighbor, who has voted for Trump 3 times, he's not my enemy. He's somebody I need to bring over to enlighten. Now, to win an election, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time with him. He's going to have to figure a lot of that out on himself, and he wants to figure it out on himself. I'm going to spend time with people who are feeling disenfranchised, feeling hurt, rightfully feeling hurt, and saying, okay, well, let's bring you and your friends to the polls and vote. And so to provide for the common defense is both an external and an internal challenge for us. Yeah.
We need you back in Congress. Or we need you in Congress. We need our Congress back. And we need sanity in Congress more than ever. We need the first article of the United States Constitution is we the people. It's based in the Congress for a reason, and we need you there.
Well, thank you. And I need your help, Chris. You're an American living abroad. So thank you for having me on. And your audience, if you're a green card holder in the United States or you're a citizen anywhere in the United States, please check me out. I'm on social media a lot. You can see what I'm doing here at the Seafood Festival at Homestead. I might be in the Seafood Festival in Marathon, one of the Florida Keys, in a couple weeks' time. Not sure, but I'm around. You can see what it's like to campaign locally for a federal office that makes a difference in Ukraine and in the world, in our country. We very much appreciate your financial support as well.
See you soon, my man. Appreciate you.
All the best.
Take care. So to our friends, I want to say thank you for joining here. This will be, of course, saved. You can go watch this later. And what I said I would do earlier, I will prepare to do now. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I see my friend Frank Figluzzi is actually running a very important discussion right now on his account about did Donald Trump, what was the headline here? That was a great headline for his space, I keep saying space, his broadcast. Did Donald Trump block domestic threat alert as he escalates the war? Fuck me, dude. Seriously? So it is currently 12:14 my time, and I will do this. How about I see you at the top of the hour I will go stretch around a little bit, crack the neck a little bit. And of course, I need to remind you that Russia is not interested in peace. They are interested in continuing their full scale aggression. And Trump's behavior is only making it worse. So, what I will do is give you a little bit of relaxation. You've had a really, really supportive week so far. I hate to see we have 50 wonderful viewers here. I don't want to turn this thing off and then restart it and then have to start from 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 and get all the way back up. I really don't. If I could just plug this into my system where I just start my videos right now, I have hours and hours of great footage from Ukraine. The powerful video stuff that's really the deep dive stories we run through the week. Um, and if you were here last week, actually, I've saved them all. They're on this account. We did a lot of stories about what's transpired over the last 4 years between the attacks on locations, the defenders and what they've gone through, the civilians. But I also feel it's very important to bring you some of the cultural love, so you see why we love the people here. It's not just about music. Actually, I'm not a poetry guy until I listen to Ukrainian poets and I get underneath what's being said, and it really speaks to me. But this last week, just to recap, and why I think it's my easy request to ask you to support this account. First, with a free subscription is always an improvement if you're not. If you are a free subscriber and you can go up to $5 or even more than that, thank you. Here's why. In the last week, we had John Jackson talk about the ubiquity violations that were happening and his personal experience here. We had Juliet come here from Decoding Fox News, join us. Fred Wellman was on with us the other day. We had Sean Penner and I doing our recap last night for the week. We had Mike Zaid with us last night. You had Phil Ehr. And if you could just see the Rolodex of what I'm rolling out for you, I'm going to keep doing it one way or the other. But your help in getting it done is invaluable. And when I reboot the broadcast here in about 45 minutes or less, I'll put a little QR code up there. So if you want to do a little bit more than that, that's good. And actually, I always say this: when you do more than that, you get a little bit of word in it. You get to, kind of tell me things that you believe should be covered. You want to know a little bit more. Like I know someone said earlier about, what's the status with Ukrainian children that are kidnapped and basically disappeared into Russian Federation. Well, when I have the resources to do so, two things happen. I could film more. I'm going to film anyway, but I can film more because I can travel across the country a little bit easier. I'm not worried about trying to bring in the money to pay the bills. I'm busy, focus head down in the topics. And I don't live in this to do profit of any fucking kind, flat out, full stop. Everyone knows that. Anyone around me long enough to know what I live like. I live in the studio that I work in. Essentially, there's a room over in the other side, and then this whole living room has been converted to being studio level. My landlord likes it. He actually worked in the news. He's a Ukrainian guy. I live, eat, drink, breathe, sleep this fight. But I also, as you noticed, I haven't given up on America. Okay, I spent 12 years as a civilian counterterrorism researcher, disinformation researcher, all these things. I cannot just throw that out. I'm not going to throw that out. I have not been throwing that out, and I'm going to stick with it. And we got to get through this together. Okay, we razum is what I have to get to say here. We work together. Okay, and that's what it takes. And for some of you, when you're asking about what's happening in Ukraine, like I said, when you're a donor, I take it serious. There's a few folks that are actually in this conversation. Like Dan said, he would do a matching donation. Um, those guys will tell you. I literally call up and tell them what their money did. You don't have to tell me. No, no, no. But I do. I have to tell you. I have to tell you what it is because I feel responsible as a teammate. As a team member with you. It's not me. I spent 4 years staying off the fucking camera and focusing my camera towards Ukrainians in front of me. That's how I wound up with 5 terabyte drives of footage. And I'm on very little of it. You hear me a little bit in conversations, but I don't do it that way. And I'm having to do it now. And I'm actually kind of comfortable with it because I know that I spent all that time not worrying about it. I don't mind talking to you. I also did radio for a long time. So chattering about what's going on. That's the easy part. But we're wiring into broadcasting so we can have more interviews. This next Tuesday, I already know that Lenny Umorova will be on here. I always say Ukrainian, but Ukrainian Crimean journalist who was also in captivity. She will debut on Substack with us on Tuesday. I'm working at the rest of the lineup, and we're actually planning on going. We've got, I don't know if my teammate's still sitting here in this space, but we've got some travels to the, shall we say, more difficult parts of Ukraine to do some filming and tell you more of what's going on. And then, of course, tomorrow I will go to the Defender rally and keep doing it. So there's a lot of stuff happening. Your support in doing so really, really it means a lot. And I can tell you, people here don't even, they rather surprised when they find out I'm not selling articles, 12 articles in Kiev Post. I haven't asked for a dime. If they want to give me a dime, that's fine. But I do it to get the fucking story in the paper for you guys. I do it so you know what's up with the electrical grid. I do it so you know what's up with the warfare on the digital front. This last week, for instance, we had the article based on the work of the Phoenix cyber defenders who were able to track the Russian drone operators and how they were using Belarusian civilian telecommunication nodes and therefore get that information over to NATO and AFU to disrupt it. They know that they can count on me. If you don't believe, go check out the Inform Napalm account. Go check out those operations that are announcing it. They will tell you they know who comes out. When they get an article done on one end that's really kind of one way for a Ukrainian audience, they can come to their ally here. I will actually I look at all of it. I step back. I don't just repeat it. Step back and say, well, what do we need to add to this? What is it that we need to say that I know, and I work even more and we get it out there and then I send it on to either Kiev Post or directly publish it here. I am now writing sometimes 2 articles per day on this platform, based on the experience that I've accumulated here for 4 years in person, also based on some extensive experience in other areas. I've been covering Trump for a long fucking time, the extremists for a long time. And so what I do is I just sit down over coffee and I just pound out the words and there's another trick. You can verbally go to your iPad, like in my case, stand pacing in my room and just dictate to it, once upon a time this fucking shit happened and get the story out. So thank you for everyone who's been supporting that. I see 53 people here. I hate to even leave because you're awesome. But if you'll just bear with me in 30 minutes, essentially at the top of the hour, 1 o'clock my time, whatever it is your time, wherever you're at. I will reboot with some music, some little short clips here in between, but basically I got some tunes for you, all filmed by me. And actually, I just got confirmation. Going to go film another one tomorrow night. So that's how it is. Always working, never done. See you soon. We'll be right back. Slava Ukraini, Heroim Slava, и пиздец Російській Федерації.